All right. Hello, Charlie. Welcome back to the call. I appreciate you being on the call with me today.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
It's just going to be me and you, but I wanted to do a quick update on the Alec Baldwin situation because obviously there's been charges filed and a lot of things going on, and I don't think people are fully understanding exactly what's going on with him. So let's kind of discuss this a little bit. Tell me what your thoughts are. What we talked before that he might be facing charges, and now he is. So what's he facing?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jeff. Appreciate the invite again. I did pull up the charging document. It's about 10 pages long, filed January 31st of this year, 2023, in the state of New Mexico. And like you said, as we talked about, we figured charges would be forthcoming criminally, but at least definitely civilly down the road for some type of negligence. And it appears the state of New Mexico has decided, as you and I conversed about earlier, to charge him with involuntary manslaughter under their penal code or under their criminal code here. And I'll get you the statute that references that so the folks can have it out there that want to take a look at it. It's right here. It's on the last page of the charging document, Jeff. It is it's abbreviated as NMSA 3-2-3. In parentheses is manslaughter, and it states the following: in the commission of a lawful act which might produce death in an unlawful manner or without due caution and circumspection, or during the unlawful act not amounting to a felony, to wit, negligent use of a deadly weapon. And they charge him with 2 counts of that, and there's some legal maneuvering that has been going on as far as why they charge him 2 counts. One is being the person that held the weapon, and the other being the producer of the video, which has to do with the way I understand it for some blogs, the introduction of evidence and probative evidence and evidence that may be over, not overcharging, but over prejudicial to him as far as if they only charged him one way. So that's the way I understand it for some legal blogs that we've been reading when you and I decided to discuss this case.
All right, so let me kind of just recap a little bit. So we had the armorer, who
Right.
She's responsible for the weapons on the set.
That's correct.
She hands a gun off to like a manager of some sort.
Correct.
And he hands a gun to Alec Baldwin, and they are practicing a scene where firing the gun wasn't even needed. Not that that really matters, but I guess it's going to come up in conversation anyhow. Because people are already saying that, it was a rehearsal and there was no even reason to be firing the gun. But so the question comes up is it the armorer's fault, or is it his fault, or is it the manager's fault? Some people, even like you said, are going back over the fact that he's a producer. So he hired the armorer. So he's kind of taking responsibility on that. The armorer's going along and saying that Alec Baldwin wouldn't do the proper training needed, wouldn't get off his phone during the training. How does that play into any negligence on his side?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to weigh whether the jury buys off on culpability or being responsible for the actions of the actions related in the charges. You'll notice that I believe the gentleman's name, as I'm trying to look through the document here while we're speaking, is David Halls. He was an associate producer of some kind on the film. And then we have Miss Gutierrez Reed, who was the person hired to be in charge of the firearms. And there's been some discussion, as you know, in the media and elsewhere that she wasn't qualified for the position.
Right.
And it goes kind of into what you were saying is, as the producer, not only did he have a interest in making a good film per se, but in saving money and keeping it under budget. So, is there a discussion about hiring people that were unqualified if she was such? And my understanding is that Mr. Halls has taken a guilty plea, which would usually lead me to believe that, like you and I spoke about last time, that he's going to probably testify if such, time comes down the road for trial. But I think, as you and I again also discussed, is as we teach all our students at your places and elsewhere where we get a chance to teach, is after you've been involved in an incident, no matter what it is how much do you say and how much do you not say? And I believe it's kind of undisputed that Mr. Baldwin may have talked too much, that his attorneys if they recommended him to talk, I might consider getting other attorneys, is because he's on record repeatedly saying he never pulled the trigger. But when the weapon sent to the FBI firearms unit, there is no way for that 45 caliber weapon to go off in all their testing without someone pulling the trigger. And as you mentioned previously earlier, he's on video and still shots practicing this scene over and over and over again, of drawing from his shoulder holster to aiming towards what people were standing in front of him in that church scene, they called it in the documents. So yeah, I think that's going to be a problem. If it goes to trial, I'd probably be honest with you, my prediction is that it probably won't go to trial, and there'll be some kind of plea to something of a lesser offense. But I would, again, venture a guess, because of monetary things and the way society is, that there'll be some civil suits looking for financial compensation down the road, as one of my best educated guesses.
So let me throw a little question in here for you. So the armorer is saying that he wouldn't go through the training, and that he wouldn't get off his phone, and whatever it is, he wouldn't take the proper steps to get the training that she felt he needed to do. Now, does she become responsible because she didn't enforce him to go through the training? So she's trying to use it as an excuse, but in reality, it may backfire on her.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like you said, a rock and a hard place, if you will, that they're all going to start pointing fingers, which happens quite frequently in most criminal cases. Is it wasn't me, it was them, and the culpability of who has responsible for what. She's certainly going to say, I did everything I could do. And, the way I think the big issue is, one, like I said, I think it goes back to, as far as his culpability and his responsibilities. He said numerous times on numerous media outlets, I didn't pull the trigger. But if you read the charging document, I don't see what page it is, but I'm going to read it. Baldwin approached the responding deputies on the day of the shooting, which was October 21st of last year, wanting to talk to them because he was the one that, quote unquote, fired the gun. Those kind of statements made and codified and memorialized don't work out well, in my opinion, and others, for Mr. Baldwin or anyone else involved in an incident such as this tragedy was in New Mexico. I think, go back to your question a little bit earlier, though, is she responsible for making him go to the training? I guess she could have walked off the set if he didn't. But again, I think it goes back to their charge of, he was the producer and he controlled all these people as the head person or the boss.
Right.
So I think that kind of creates a problem for her if she wanted to keep her job. Now, I don't know if that's her allegation.
I agree. Yeah. So I definitely think that might be something that may come back and backfire on her a little bit. But now let me throw kind of a devil's advocate curveball at you. All right. So I have my car fixed.
Sure.
The place I take it is a professional place. They fix my brakes. I'm driving down the road, my brakes don't work, and I end up killing somebody. Am I responsible for that? And that goes along with the thought of, he hired somebody to check the firearms because she didn't properly check the firearms. Does that remove his responsibility as part of shooting on the scene? Or, so let's go back to my car theory. So am I responsible for somebody else's improper fix of my car?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you said, it's kind of a devil's advocate question, but I expected nothing less. But it's good. It's a thought-provoking question. Well, the officers on the scene, those are the charge, throughout the investigation, is it that they just made a reasonable mistake? But you have to go back to the responsibility of you to avoid, if you were following too closely when it had the accident, was that a contributing factor? What other contributing factors to the accident were present at the time? Were you doing excessive speed and couldn't stop, whether there was, functioning brakes or not? In that analogy, some of those go on to the ones that we've all heard about of, consuming too much alcohol at someone's house and then driving away. Are you responsible for the driving while intoxicated charge? I think down the road, most of those end up with, if there isn't some quantifiable evidence that, Jeff's auto shop failed to purposefully or criminally negligently not perform the proper brake repair in your question, that led to all other things absent Jeff would have never had the accident, I think you might have a case down the road. You'd certainly have a civil recourse of, look, I took it to, Charlie's brake shop. He failed to do X, Y, and Z, but I think that's down the road. But there's so many of these, how far back down the road do we go? We talked to a lot of folks, obviously, in our businesses, in our training about firearms. Do we go all the way back to the, manufacturer of the firearm if somebody misuses it, especially with some of these school shootings and things. So, I mean, I think it's a great question. It's certainly thought provoking. So,
and I think you brought up a good point on that. So if I get my car fixed and it's fixed wrong, and I'm driving down the road and I don't add to the issue, then I might be able to turn around and blame the car mechanic that fixed it. However, in Alec Baldwin's situation, he added to the issue. He pointed the gun at somebody, he pulled the trigger, and he did some other things on his part that had nothing to do with, in reality, the armor being blamed. I mean, because he broke some things. I mean, broke some laws in the sense of, not laws, but rules, pointing a firearm at somebody else, pulling the trigger, that kind of thing. So he definitely added to the negligence of the situation, I believe. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment of it. I think, like you said, is, we'll keep in line with the car question is, we'll say the car brake repair shop that you're referring to in your question turned the car over to you and you picked it up. You had every reason to believe that the brakes were fixed appropriately or the way they said they were. You approached the car, and even though when you approach a car, you don't step on the gas, you stepped on the gas and hit the car and then try to blame it on the brakes. That's kind of the analogy I use to go, hey, look, I got a gun that I didn't know was loaded in this case, allegedly. But I still anyways just pulled the trigger and pointed it at someone, even though I knew I shouldn't have, even though he says he didn't pull the trigger. It seems that all evidence, according, at least to the FBI and the prosecutor's office, is contrary to that opinion. So I think that's kind of how you have to look at it.
Okay.
Even though you're given a tool of lethality, which is a weapon, or a car, a 5,000 pound, metal missile, if you will, you're still responsible for how you operate it. Now you can go backtracking and figure out that, Jeff's auto shop didn't do it correctly, or Charlie did not, apply the rotors and brake pads correctly, but you still have a responsibility once you accept that. And I think to handle it or operate it responsibly. And I think that's going to be the issue.
All right. Now, my question for you is, you mentioned that Alec Baldwin is facing maybe 18 months in jail.
Correct.
18 months for shooting somebody. So is there a reason for only 18 months?
Well, there's an 18-month, and the way that the state charged it is 18 months on that involuntary manslaughter charge. It's because the way I read it is, and I haven't, got to be honest, I haven't delved into the statute and the code, but
and we're not attorneys. Let's get that out there. We're not attorneys.
No. But they, it seems to me they want to charge him with a firearms enhancement, which brings an additional 5 years. That's why you hear some media outlets saying he can get up to 6.5 years. That's like in the federal system where I worked for years, as you know, there's a firearms enhancement for using a firearm during the commission of certain crimes, which is usually a mandatory minimum. And I think that's what they're seeking, but there's a lot of, like I said, I do enjoy, as reading the legal blogs. It's an uphill battle to get that negligence, and maybe that's what they're hoping for, is just to get a conviction, which sets up, as we know, sometimes that people seek, and I'm not saying they're not entitled to it, financial gain for these kind of negligent acts, rather than if they can't get a conviction. But I'm not saying anything about the district attorney's or the state's attorney's office in New Mexico. Is obviously they believe there's charges, thus they brought them, and that they can prove them beyond a reasonable doubt. So I think it's going to be an interesting case. We love to follow these cases, as you know, on the forums and things. So I'm interested to see how it comes out.
All right. Well, I just wanted to kind of get an update on that, because obviously it's in the news, and we did a call on it a while back. And I think we're just going to have to do a follow-up on it, kind of see where it goes and see where the charges plan out. But I wanted to kind of do this video because people are questioning, is it Alec's fault or is it the armor's fault? And I think kind of the way we just brought it across kind of opens up the door to, it could be either or both. And that's kind of where the the charges are lying right now is we really don't know which way it's going to go.
Right. No, and like you said, all the people involved have been charged. I know some folks, on the online forum and are commenting that they need to but most prosecutors' office will overcharge, hope to get a lesser charge.
Right. Of course.
Somebody to plead, but they're not going to charge things they don't think they can win. It just doesn't do them any good. And it's not the way to do it. If they can't prove the case, regardless of what the emotions are or things, there's no ethics in doing that either. You don't just charge because everybody's upset. You can't prove it for, even though we can go back to the OJ case where everybody thinks everybody should have been, but that's not how the justice system works. But it is going to be an interesting case, and it's always good to have differing opinions and questions. And
I agree.
So I think that's it's a good topic to talk about, and it's certainly a good one we need to revisit when the time comes.
All right, well, let's see what happens in the future. And other than that, Charlie, appreciate you being on the call. I look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Jeff. Take care now.
All righty.
See you, bud.